finding out my friend's parent had actually married their in-law. Yes, the very in-law, the very house I was going to. Well, welcome back, winning team. What is up? And we are in part 2 of these videos that I'm doing this morning. Happy Sabbath, because in the previous video I was talking about this like self-righteous licensed relationship therapist who ran off with essentially the other in-law. So she was an in-law, and there was another in-law of the same family, as in these two siblings both had married two other people, obviously individually, and those two people ran off together. Now, it's funny because I just found out about this as I was just playing games and loitering around as you do on the morning of the Sabbath when you're waiting for everything to wake up so you can go and get on with what you need to be getting on with. And then I remembered that I lived through somebody going through this. And I feel like it's important for me to talk about this because I'm very doom and gloom here. I remind you guys every day that I have no enjoyment in living on this planet whatsoever. The only reason I'm not literally trying to kill myself is because I promised God that I would stop trying. For his sake, because maybe I can help him. That's why. That's really why. Otherwise, I hate it here. Welcome back to another episode of This World Does Not Disappoint and being disappointing. Yeah. So I lived through this with one of my closest friends, and we were like really close, like to the point of like sisters, right? And I was in her life when she found out that I'm going to try and leave out the genders of which parent was which, but one of her parents was actually married to the other parent's sibling's spouse, right? Now, I need to give a bit of backstory because I tell these stories, guys, because sometimes, because everybody's so used to sweeping things under the carpet and no one wants to talk about anything that makes them uncomfortable, and everybody's afraid of confrontation, everybody's afraid of disagreeing, and like, even though that's normal and we're all different, I am realizing that I honestly have every right to hate living on this planet because I've actually lived through and seen so many things where the only reason why I've never thought into a lot of them is because everyone always wants to conveniently have the perspective of, oh, I'm sure it's not like that everywhere. Oh, I'm sure there's this. Oh, I'm sure there's that. But I feel like everyone just would rather pretend everything's good because it's easier than actually deal with what's bad, which is why all the bad things just get worse and why the bad people of the world continue to be enabled. This is exactly what happened in this scenario. So let's flash back in this whole story, because my other thing is like I was saying about the children and how I feel like the kids are never considered in all this stuff properly. They're just almost seen like, I feel like even when people doing like divorce proceedings and stuff, the kids are literally dealt with just the same way as the assets. Like, you get half the house, you get half the money from the house, and you get half the time with the kids. Like, they're not even humans. They're not even treated as humans. This is why I think parents are sickening to me and I can't stand them. They're like a stench. I cannot stand to be around, because I've seen so many things with kids where I'm like, no one was thinking of the children in this scenario. Just like all this Epstein and Diddy stuff, people are more interested on which of the celebrities are on the list, which of the celebrities are on this. I'm like, where are the children? This is what I'm asking. Where are the children? Where are the affected children? Where are the currently being affected children? But no, everyone wants to talk about the celebrities and the A-lister and if your favorite A-lister's on the list. So I hate it here. Anyway, here's what happened, right? And so me and her have been friends since like literally year 7, since the first week of year 7. In fact, we all went for a sleepover. A whole bunch of us girls went for a sleepover at her house, and it was really fun, and we were just young and stuff. And I remember her telling the story of when her parents separated. I don't think I'm going to get away from mentioning the genders because it's going to get confusing otherwise. So we were at her mother's house, okay? And we were having all fun. We were just kids, you know what I mean? We were like doing this little karaoke thing. We went out, we played outside. It was a really fun time, and we had loads of fun. And I just remember her telling me, and she kind of said it in a way where it was like, this was really traumatizing, but we're just not going to talk about it right now. And I was like, okay, because we hadn't become like best friends yet. And so she was like, yeah, my parents separated when I was about like 7. And all I remember is him throwing a hairdryer at her, right? So we're obviously thinking, whoa, like, which I know she said it to everybody, but she said it to me. Anyway, and that was the start of it. And that was the start of me being around her. So I've been, throughout our lives from then onwards, we would spend a lot of time around each other's families, right? And so she would come to my house after school a lot of the time and spend loads of time. In fact, eventually, because what her parents had agreed to is that they were going to split the custody 50-50. Exactly. So her and her brother both spent exactly half, 3.5 days at each parent's house. Yeah. So like I said, she used to come to my house all the time. I used to go to her house all the time, her houses all the time. And so I also got a feel out for what these kinds of people were like and how different they were, because those two were very different. I don't know how it ever worked in the first place, to be honest. But nevertheless, I can't believe I'm talking about this right while I'm going through the divorce of the Sidemen, guys. Like, literally the biggest heartbreak ever. And this is why I'm like, this is crazy. Anyway, I'm so sad about this. And so she would do 50-50, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I feel so grateful to like that I live in one house where my parents are like both here, albeit my dad would spend a lot of time away, right? So that's why it's like, I don't know, I have my own mixed type of trauma where it's like I don't have I have like a half absent, half present father. That was my upbringing. And so I don't really get the absent father people, I don't really get the present father people. I'm just in the middle. So I'm not really the single family household people. I'm also not really I don't know why somehow in this life, I'm always just never in any category that seems to have anybody else in it. Right? Because it would be, sometimes he would be away for like a year or 2 years. Sometimes he'd be gone for a month. Sometimes it was just something else. So anyways, but still, I was still living the life of like my parents together, and we was still always in contact and whatever. So I always used to see myself as better off. Like, wow, I'm glad I'm better off than I'm grateful to be in my position, because I would hate to do this, because I'd be with her like in her bedroom after, like on the times when she's like packing her bags to go to her dad's house and packing her bags to go to her mum's house, or having to come to school with another whole thing of stuff because she's going to stay with her dad's for the week, and she's doing this, and it was exhausting, right, being around it. So in a way, now that I look back at it, I feel like that's maybe where it was nice for her to just be at my house sometimes, and we would just hang out, because it's kind of like a bit of a breather, because like I said, eventually she ended up spending more time actually at my house than she did I think her dad's house. Anyway, so, and again, it was very tense and very awkward, because her parents always had tension, yeah, and they were very respectful about it, but you could feel the tension, and it was uncomfortable, because I would also be there at the pickups and the drop-offs of the changeovers, right? And they always used to meet at this one petrol station, and I felt so uncomfortable there. I'm not even in the family, right? And so I just thought, again, I'm a kid, so I'm just like, well, they broke up. They obviously had their reasons, didn't think into it. Anyways, her mum gets, in the midst of all of these years of us knowing each other, her mum gets married to this guy, and she's like, yeah, and her dad also had moved on to this other woman, which again is so complicated, all of this. Like, because her dad, yeah, he didn't like, so she's white, by the way, my friend. He didn't like her, my friend, to date black guys, okay? But he was justified, because he even explained it, yeah, that the reason is his wife that he's now with, who had a mixed race daughter, she had been abused by that man before they got together. So he was like, I don't know about all that. And I was like, fair, because he wasn't actually, in my opinion, being racist at all. He was like, this is his experience and this is what happened. And I'm like, if we don't want to have bad stereotypes, or we don't want people to feel a way about us, and that goes for all races, then don't do the things that are going to make people think badly about you. So I understood that, and he was always very, very nice. In fact, he always used to really encourage me. Was always quite impressed with the stuff that I did and whatever. And his house was really fun to be at. Can I just say, it was really, really fun. And so there was that in the midst. So I'm saying there's just brokenness and just heartbreak and just chaos. And then we all go out and pretend like everything's so much fun on earth, right? So that was that story. And so he ends up with this other woman. She was cool. My friend and the stepsister didn't get along for a long time. They didn't get on. But eventually they did. When they became adults. But anyway, going back to the other side. So I was there for the tensions of it all. Like, oh, this is tense. But, and this is where actually having friends, like growing up, I feel like it's so weird how, as much as we all say, oh, this is everything, that is everything, it's weird where you end up actually finding your safe spaces in this life. Because it's a lot of times it's not where you would think it's going to be. Like I said, I realized for me, going back to my school, like being around my teachers, like I actually felt safe amongst my teachers. Those are adults I actually felt safe around. So being at my school, just going back then when I was just there the other day, I felt like this feeling I haven't felt in literally years, where I just felt like I could just relax. I was crying, and I just had that feeling of like, it literally felt like a home. And I know there's a lot of bad things that happen there, but it was like manageable amount of bad things, you know, that you'd expect. But just being around there, seeing some of my old teachers, seeing all the old things, seeing how the school, like the energy of the school hadn't changed. Like it felt like I'd gone back. Like it was like an energy you can't create. And I was just like, oh, I felt so afterwards I felt elated, I felt safe, I felt like I'd been to like a spa. That's the only way I can describe it. On the other hand, her mum got married, we married to this guy, and I was all there. I was there for it. We were all there at the reception, and everyone's doing all the little party dances. These are the images that flash through my head when I think about why relationships aren't worth it here in any type of relationship. So we're all doing all these party dances. It's all fun and games. The whole wedding thing, it was all no fun and games, whatever. And I was also obviously used to go and stay at that house as well. And these guys were both very well off, especially her dad. But they both were, to be honest with you. And I don't even know what either of them did for work. This is how you know I really was like young and just not paying attention at this point. Because what did they do for work? I don't know. Anyway, so everything's all fine and dandy. Everybody's moved on, and and it's just a part of our normal lives, you know, me and her as friends, hanging out, like growing up, getting older, having school, focusing on exams. You know, the parents are all asking, how's your exams going? How's this? You know, the usual. People are there for each other's birthday parties and for certain events, you know, and all that, just the usuals. And then, I don't know how the story came out, but turns out the man her mother married was her father's sister's husband. And that was the argument that led to the divorce that we found that she was telling me about all the way back in year 7 when I was literally like 10, 11. And I was like, what? And she was like, I felt so bad for her because I was like, I wouldn't know how to feel. Like there's certain ways that people can break up and you're like, oh, you know what, fair enough. And there's just certain things where it's like, it shifts entirely how you see a person. Because going back between the two of the parents here, this is the crazy part. Her mum was always the one who was more like strict and by the rules. But I also think that's just a mum thing. Because, you know, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. So that never really crossed my mind. And like I said, they were both lovely. I spent time at both their houses. I liked both of them. All was well. But her mum was definitely more of a stickler, like a stickler for the rules and a stickler. And so her doing something like that seems unheard of, right? Because she's the prim and proper. This is what I'm saying. None of this would have mattered if she hadn't been putting herself out as this like whatever. And I could sense from my friend that sometimes maybe she would feel like, you know, between like, you know, I don't know how to describe this. Like she wasn't living up to the required standards, if you will, or expected standards, which I felt for her. I think that was a big thing for her, actually. I really felt for her for that because obviously, and also just the uncertainty of it all. So to find that out, and when she told me, I remember being like, no way. And it was like, you could tell it was like a punch to her absolute gut after she found that out. That like, and in a lot of ways, the way her life turned out in the end, I do think a lot of this stuff is part of the reason why her life turned out the way that it did, the way that she dealt with this. Because then obviously now she knows that changes the dynamics entirely. And like I said, everyone was just swept under the carpet. It was never mentioned. I was thinking, damn, her dad's been through hell. But it doesn't surprise me because I said to you guys before, men, in my opinion, this is why they need Jesus. They don't have discernment and they fall for the women, the worst types of women. This is why, because those kinds of women are selfish and like more entitled and more this. So they kind of seem more engaged, I feel like a lot of the time, than other women who are kind of minding their business and not desperately just looking for like a handout or for somebody to just whatever, or to do whatever's right only for them. So I feel like this is what trips them up. So that's why it kind of doesn't surprise me because again, I know, so I can think of so many stories as we speak running through my head of situations that I've seen. And so that was such a kick to the gut, and I obviously was there for all of this. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is exactly what I'm talking about with everything that I'm saying to you guys. And the thing that upsets me, why I wanted to do this separate to the previous video, is they're not thinking about how it affects the kids part. Because you can be here as this strict stickler mother who, you know, she was always so quite like, she was the kind of person who'd be like, quite strict about a lot of things. And I think to an extent, she almost worried about me contaminating her daughter, because we all know I'm a little bit of a wild child, okay? And so we definitely were always on our best behavior. Although her daughter turned out way worse than anything anybody ever thought about. Because I told you guys, she was all there at university. I'm going there, and she went from innocently wanting to study this and pursue singing to I'm finding her. She's there talking about how she's been sleeping with these drug dealers, and they're the ones who paid for her flipping birthday party that I went to. There's all a flipping cocktail bar in her. He's built a cocktail bar in her house. She's singing the ad libs on his music, and I'm like, this is where we're at. And then she's dressing like, literally, like, I don't know how to describe it. Her body was out everywhere, all over social media. This is how we ended up not being friends, because we just didn't align anymore. We just didn't align. You know, she was kind of just out there and desperate for attention, which, again, this is what's sad, because I'm like, I don't judge her for that, because I feel like her circumstances of how she grew up and everything that happened is kind of what led to that. But she's all out here now, just like, and I mean, when I say she went all out, I'm not talking about like the Insta girlies who just find outfits to wear that to be an excuse to have their body out. I'm talking latex thongs, those big high heels that are like this big. She's like she's gone to the extreme. The extreme. Okay, this is what happened. So I'm like, is this where we're at? Is this? So that's why I'm like, it's kind of ironic that I was the one questioned a lot of times in a lot of spaces of being the one potentially to contaminate folks. But actually, where was I? I was all going to church at a cult in London and being a dancer, and then going to Hillsong, and then, you know what I mean? Trying to find Jesus and trying to be a good girl as best as I can and follow the Lord. But I do think that the way she turned out, this is why I don't take people just acting like people turn into things, or things turn out a certain way out of nowhere. This is exactly why, because it's like things lead up and there's a build up. And like I said, for me, one of my biggest build ups in life was that I had a very solid like first 7 years of my life. That's why I really feel like when I gave my life to Jesus, that it was just like the Lord being like, okay, we're gonna just you just come over here. Because I had a very solid stages of my life at the beginning, very, very solid. And so to me, I had a lot of sense of self at a very early start, you know. And so when other things happened, I kind of dealt with them differently than other people, because I had the Lord at this point. So I always have had him. That's why we're as close as we are, because it's like we've been in it. He's been there with me. Like this, like me and her, we've been through a lot of things together, and we've been in it. And that's where I'm saying, like, this is why I can see it, because I'm like, it's strange. It's not strange to me that people struggle to have a relationship with God, because I can see why. When I got close to the Lord, when I gave my life to the Lord, I was a kid. And so I was interacting with him. The same thing that children do with the adults around them, where you immediately trust them and they're like your hero and they're like the ones you want to follow, and you want to be like. The same way people do that with humans, I did that very early on with God. So it's almost like I never had to like unpack something later in life, because me and God were ready. It just always was what it was. It just always was what it was from the beginning. You know what I mean? And so other things that happened, this is what it's like. It didn't affect me the same, because it's like, my hope wasn't there anyway. Like my hope wasn't there anyway. I wasn't seeing everybody as these figures to believe in, like friends or family or whatever. Don't get me wrong, of course it's still heartbreaking, a lot of it. It doesn't change the heartbreak and the heartache, but like it wasn't like my reality was shattered, because I think that's happened to a lot of people. This is just one example, but I think this has happened to a lot of people, because it's natural as a kid. You're born, the people around you, they're like your heroes, right? Because I even have this like with kids, you know, this is why, again, as a teacher, you have to be really careful and have very certain boundaries, because like, look, there's even me who's as an adult who doesn't trust anyone, doesn't like anyone, doesn't want to be around anyone, goes to my old school, and I'm seeing my old teachers from when I was a teenager, and I'm having this deep emotional experience of like, whoa, this is crazy. I remember this. I'm excited. I was so proud that my school was what I thought it was. If you know what I mean, because sometimes you wonder, like, maybe things weren't what you thought they were. I was so proud to know that my school was exactly what it was. And like, yeah, it's evolved, and things are different now in a lot of ways, but it hasn't changed. That was a big part of my childhood. Like, it was an important part of my childhood. This is where I had this friend, where we used to hang out and we used to do stuff, and we had a lot of our big first moments. Like I said, she was going to be a singer. Like, I think so much about this. Like, our childhood really shapes us. That's why I don't know why we don't seem to take it seriously. And like I said, I really do think children have become just like an afterthought. I do think children have become just like an afterthought in society, and especially when it comes to adult relationships and people who've had kids. That's why I don't understand the idea of saying you will not marry somebody but you have children with them. And I'm going to say it out loud, because I'm not saying you should marry somebody only to then have children with them, but I'm saying, which commitment is bigger? It's a bigger commitment to have a child with somebody than it is to marry them. Because now you guys are tethered together for life. That's exactly why I don't want to get pregnant, because of the thought of me being tethered to somebody else for the rest of my life through this child. Because again, that's what the child deserves. It's only fair. They get to see, they'll have a relationship with both of their parents. I'm going to be forced to have to be around you. I can't do that. So that's again where I'm like, it's kind of selfish to do that, because you're like, oh, it's fine. We'll just do this, or you'll just spend this time. And then people again will talk about how a lot of adults will become offended about suggesting that they weren't there really for their children's lives. But it's like, but you actually weren't, because if your child isn't there around you all the time, they've got one rule in this house and one rule in that house, all they're going to learn, they're not going to learn something steady that comes from a stable relationship of two people working together. They're just going to learn, I can get away with this here and I can get away with that there. Hold on. You can only police so much what's happening in one side and not the other. And like I said, because of the relationships with people that I saw and people that I knew, I'm like, I see. And then I also had another friend, and she had a completely opposite version of this entire story. And I saw how you win in life. I saw how you win. And this is why she won in life and she was doing well in life, where the way her family came together, I don't know how her parents started out, but her mum was teaching assistant, and her dad used to work at a golf club, and her family, big golfers, and she basically, they got together and they didn't really have much, right, at all. But they decided to build together. He wanted to buy and sell, he ended up buying the golf place, or owning it somehow. And then he bought it and sold it, and then eventually he went into the business of selling real leather. Now, as time has gone on, and as they worked together through everything, and they've been able to actually manage to make things work and whatnot and what have you, even though, they had the classic kind of relationship, where she makes fun of him, but then, as in her mum, but then her mum's also the woman I've seen who's just like, that woman, she's the type of woman, who has to do everything in the house, but actually doesn't complain about it ever. Never. Like, she takes it in her stride. She has to do everything for everybody, and she never complains about it. And the other interesting thing I found is, because my friend, she was a middle child, she had an older brother who was like in his early 20s when I was still there. Their parents are very much, stay here as long as you need to. We're buying your cars, we're paying for this, you work up your career, because he was working on his career as becoming a professional golfer. They were like, focus on your career. We just want to make sure you guys have what you need to start out well in life. I mean, it's unheard of. After we've graduated and we started working, her mum used to literally drop her off at the station every day and pick her up as an adult, as a 21-year-old adult, just to offset the costs of how much she was paying for university. She was paying to get into London at her nice job. And she wasn't making enough to afford to move. And also the transportation cost is really expensive anyways in London, and getting from here to get to a station and parking and all of that was a nightmare. So, that's what I'm saying, her mum just took it in her stride. She didn't care. Because eventually they got made enough money where she no longer had to work, and so she stopped working. So she dedicated her entire time to family. And I was like, you guys won, because they worked hard together from the beginning. They did everything they could for a family as a family, and that being said, then all of their children have found themselves in successful careers and have all, can live independently and do things and whatever. And they didn't start out that way. But they made it that way because of the people that were involved. And this is what I'm saying, like, it's not a luck of the draw, it's a choice how we all choose to behave, and it's consideration. Because like I said, other parents are very like, I don't want to do anything for my kids, they need to start doing this, you're this age now, you need to do this. And it's not coming from a place of I'm trying to teach you to be independent. It's coming from a place of I can't be asked. Coming from a place of I'm going to use this as an excuse to get you to do things that are not your responsibility. Because you could see the difference, because I could see it now. I could see it from hanging around her, being around her house all the time and stuff like that, that like all of her responsibilities that she had, it genuinely was all about actually helping her out in life to succeed, and not some kind of like, you know, because I even say that when I say about kids getting older and all this, and I feel for some people when they're like, I'm paying, like they're like doing certain things, taking all these responsibilities, and it's like, but you could have saved that for your own life, like for your own life. Hold on a minute. And like their family gatherings, like I actually believed in, because like I know, for example, going back to the Christmas example that I always give, her mum again, and not in a way, because you know some people will do stuff for you, but then they'll make you feel bad that they did it for you, like a lot of parents do. Like, oh, I gave you life. Now you need to feel like you owe me. In fact, you should be, and you need to remember that I'm the reason you're here. Like, it's like that's actually really horrific. And that doesn't help with kids, by the way, because I notice it in a lot in kids when they feel like a burden in life. You see, being a teacher, yeah, it's a lot more of a psychological task than it is anything else, because you have to deal with people who, with children who, a lot of them don't necessarily feel care. The reason why they don't care as much as the adults would want them to think is because they already feel like a burden anyway, and they're scared of being a bigger burden. That's why when I teaching things like maths, right, and people don't get things right the first time, you can tell most of the time, most kids, most of them will react in a way where it's just like they immediately give up. Something to do, it's any version of being scared of like, being scared of almost like being seen to be a burden, you know, or that they're going to be somehow like abandoned. Because even when I was at my school, my old school, at the leaver service that I went to, I remember, yeah, that in one of the form tutors, right, one of the form tutors, she must have joined the school halfway through the year and become a form tutor halfway through, and she said something that struck me, because I've been in these situations with kids before, and it's these words are gut wrenching when it comes from kids. And she was saying, like, she said, I know one of you said to me when I started, am I going to leave you just like the last person? And I've seen that with the kids, like the way these children respond, especially because they're not like us adults, where we're good at like hiding things and just storing all of our issues. That's why we're all walking around in pride and we're all just storing everything inside. They're scared to lose like the adults that they like and the adults that they trust. They're really scared. And I've had that situation with kids multiple times, right? And so when she said that, I knew that cut her to the core. It's the same reason why I always say to you guys, if I decide to start out an academic year, I have to see it through all the way to the end, because how am I going to just drop the kids at the last hurdle? I couldn't do that to them. And that's why I don't like to work in any places like schools and stuff, because I don't want to have to leave because I can't be there, and I don't want to disappoint them. And there's so many times with children, it's broken my heart, you know, because I can see that it's broken their hearts, because I'm paying attention. Because obviously we come from a history as a society that children are seen and not heard, and that you just feed them and then they just go off and you just ignore them. But actually they're very fragile, like very, very fragile, and very vulnerable, you know, on an emotional level. So like the things that kids have done and kids have said, I remember when I was with one class I was with, this one was heart shattering for me. This was the last time I ever worked in the classroom, like that. When in the middle of my lesson, a kid stands up in front of everybody in the entire classroom and asks me, like, Miss, do you love us as much as we love you? And I had only been there for like 3 weeks. But everybody had been treating them like such, like, these guys are a tough class, these kids are this, like, this is why we're becoming the adults that we're becoming, where we do these heinous things, guys, because we're not focusing enough on what children need and what it means in childhood, like to actually shape a child. Like the Bible says, teach a child in the way he should go, and when he's older, he will not depart from it. Like, we're not giving them the love that they deserve. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I'm seeing kids, I'm seeing them asking questions. You know, the other day I had a kid, you know, she, bless her, she's really not a fan of maths and stuff. And we had a really interesting we had some really interesting interactions, because basically her family, they're like, let's say, you could say we've got connections. So they had been told by somebody else that, like, oh, that I'm in teaching. They're like, oh, could you get her to tutor our daughter? And I was like, I guess. I only like to do that, for, to be honest, for people that I know and parents who I like. So I actually happen to like this couple a lot. So I was like, sure. Anyways, she hates maths. Anyway, and we were going back and forth and back and forth, and I was teaching her a lesson, because I was realizing that if she continues her life with this mentality that she has of just giving up, it's never going to go away, because she's going to need to figure out how she deals with things. And we spend a lot of time talking about that. And not just her, also their other daughter, her parents are like, listen, whatever you need to do, if you guys need to do more of a therapy session, please go there. Like, that's what they literally said, because they're like, we don't know what to do. So I was doing all of this, and one day she says to me, do you hate me? And I was like, do I hate you? And I was like, no, but I'm sad to see you, like, not fighting for yourself is what I'm sad about. And, and then she started crying. And there's a lot of times where I've caused children to cry, which doesn't sound like a good thing, but it is actually a good thing, because they have to, like, feel safe enough to be honest, so that they can heal and they can move forward and know that this adult is actually listening and paying attention. And maybe I'm upset, and yes, I want to hide it, but they're not ridiculing me for it, and they're not doing this. They're actually hearing me out. And it always works out that after conversations like that, all of a sudden, the next time, everybody knows how to do the work all of a sudden. And that's what I mean when people say, I don't know how you do what you do. It's like, I know you don't, because you don't do it, because the world doesn't. And when people are like, oh, what's this magic secret to get kids to do better in school? They're doing all these new things now. We're opening up all these special education schools, because people with this. I'm getting yesterday. I was looking for my email. Was it today? Yesterday or today? I was looking at my email, because I avoid my emails. And I'm seeing job in this climate where people in my generation are doing thousands and thousands of applications. I'm seeing job offer in my thing. All teaching. Because no one's fixing the real problem here. The real problem is that kids are not in happy, healthy, loving homes. They're not coming from stable families and stable backgrounds. They're coming from adults who probably should have never been having kids. They're coming from environments when it's uncomfortable, we sweep things under the carpet. That's the problem. And that's what I do differently, because I hone in. And I'm like, I don't ask them about their lives. I don't get into detail about, like, them. I ask them a little, like, I ask them, like, how they are and stuff like that. I don't, like, go into detail, like, and so what did your father and mother say? I don't do that. I don't need to, because whatever they're feeling, eventually it's going to come out. And you'll be surprised how many times, a kid has said to me, please don't tell my parents. This happened with a kid that was being bullied earlier this year to me. And I was just like, I hate when kids do this, because they don't, again, it's not their fault, but I understand what corner they're backing me into. And again, this is why I can't work in the school system, because sometimes I think the kids are actually right not to tell their parents. Because there was a girl, and she was really upset in one of my lessons I was doing. And I was like, what's going on with you? This is why I even have a job now, by the way, where I don't have to teach in the classrooms, because so many kids are getting pulled out of school. That's the crazy part. But still have to do the school thing. So they need teachers who are not in school, who are doing things online, which is where I come in. But anyway, and so I could see something was off with her, right? And I was like, what's going on with you? And she was adamant that it was nothing. So we continued to do the work. And I was like, are you sure? Like, and I kept asking, because I know it's a blockage. Like, this is the same with us as adults. When you have something going on inside that's bothering you, it's going to block you from being able to continue with the other things. So I was just like, she wanted to ignore it, whatever it was. And I'm like, we're not going to get any further, because she couldn't do the work. She was not focused. And again, a lot of adults would just snap immediately. And I was like, this something's off here. And it always hits me like a feeling in my intuition with these types of situations, where I can see what's happening in front of me. But this is what I mean when I say you've got to be attentive enough to notice this stuff. And that's why when I'm like, kids are being raised on social media, like they're being unsupervised at school and unsupervised on social media. This is what I'm talking about. So I was like, what's going on? She didn't want to talk about it. The lesson went on, whatever. And then later on in the lesson, I go to her, I was like, are you sure there's nothing happening? And she's like, eventually she's like, well, to be honest, I didn't have a really, well, I didn't ask her again. She just volunteered the information. She said, to be fair, to be honest, I just haven't had a really good day today. And I was like, oh, really? Why is that? And she's like, oh, I don't know. I was like, okay, we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but if you want to talk about it, then feel free. I don't mind us, really, we can pause what we're doing now, because and I always say to the kids, like, your your health, your mental and physical health is more important than what we're doing right now, because it is. Because the only way they're going to be able to do it is by them being healthy. And it works. That's what I'm saying. You would think that me taking out half an hour to talk to a kid about what's going on in their life would not work. But actually, it's the reverse. Because now it's dealt with. Now they focus, and now they're working faster again. That's why I'm like, adding all these extra schools, extra time, extra this doesn't solve the problem that's still there, because you're not solving the actual problem. And maybe we should go to the problem solvers to tell us what the solving of the problem actually should be. So then eventually she just volunteers the information. She's like, well, basically, there's this guy that was annoying her in class because he was accusing her of kicking his chair, and she wasn't kicking his chair. And I was like, okay. And what was happening exactly is, like, he kept shouting at me to stop kicking his chair, which I was thinking, okay, if I was 10 years old, this is again what I'm saying. I don't know why adults can't do this. Put themselves in the shoes of the kids. If I was 10 years old, I remember being 10 years old, and I remember when I was at primary school, if I was sitting behind a guy, especially a boy of all things, and he's shouting in front of the whole class to stop kicking his chair, and I'm not, and he's doing it repeatedly, lesson after lesson. Bearing in mind, in primary school, you're with the same group of kids all day in the same classroom. So that's even worse. It's not even just like, at least at secondary, where you're like 1 hour in this class and then you go to another class and you're with different people. I would find that embarrassing. I would feel overwhelmed, and I would feel so many feelings. So I was like, okay, I see. And then she's like, don't tell my parents, don't tell my parents, don't tell my parents. And I was like, what do you mean? And I'm thinking, oh gosh, right. And I'm like, why do you not want to tell them? Because I said to her, like, I've seen your parents. They seem really nice, and they seem really open, and to be able to speak to. And so she was like, yeah, but the thing is, his parents are friends with my parents. And I was like, oh, in my heart, I was like, oh, right. Because it surprised me that she would say that, right? And then in theory, a lot of parents would say, oh, but they should tell us anyways, we'll bring something up. And a lot of parents would. But also, this is one of those situations with the children, like I say, where adults trying to keep face and saving face and all of this ends up in the child's having to suffer in silence. So my advice was, I had to find another angle in this whole thing, where I was like, okay, how about this? I suggested going and telling another teacher. Like, do you feel comfortable telling such and such teacher? Because I felt like this teacher was better to tell. And to be honest, I was leaving up to that teacher if they were going to decide to tell the parents. To be honest, I'll be so honest. And I just gave her the advice. I said, here's what I would do. Go and tell such and such teacher, and then come and tell me what happens. And if you feel comfortable enough, here's how you deal with people like this in real life. Ignore him. Don't react, and just don't do anything. If you feel like you can do it, then try that. If not, absolutely come back to me and we'll deal with it there further. Because I was like, if after that, all of that, then we will have to obviously tell her parents as well. But I was like, go and tell, do you feel comfortable telling this teacher? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, tell that teacher. Wait till, you're private. Because that's the other thing with kids, is it's hard. Like, this is what I never understood when I was at school, and when adults are like, if you're being bullied, you should tell. No, because then now the classroom dynamic is awkward, because you've been seen to either go and tell the teacher, and none of the adults who are telling you to do this are there while you have to deal with it. That's the thing. None of the adults who are there, when you're there having to deal with it. So it's just like, you can't win. This is something I feel for them, and I sympathize with them. So anyways, the good news is, after she came back to me, the next time we were doing what we were doing, I was like, so what did you decide to do then? Because she seemed better, and she was like, I just ignored him and he stopped doing it. And I was like, right, take that. I didn't say take that power back, but I was thinking that in my head. And this is a lesson a lot of adults also didn't learn as children, again, because again, I've said to you guys before, I don't understand why people cared so much about what bullies thought about them at school. who cares? Who cares what they think? Who cares what these people you're never going to see again care? And even if you do see them again, so what? Who cares? I can't believe people. But again, it's because we all don't have this emotional regulation. We don't know how to deal with things. So we end up giving our power away to others because we're not taught how. Like I said, I was feeling well chuffed for her after the fact. She was like, yeah, I just ignored him and he stopped and da-da-da-da. And you could see that she felt, not only was she happy that the situation had gone away, right? Because that's what we talk about sometimes, right? In our lessons, I'd say to her that, you know, in life, we all have to figure out how we deal with things that make us a little bit uncomfortable, because sometimes we're going to go through uncomfortable things. And that's why I'm heavily patient with my lessons with the kids. I'm like, it's okay. Try it again. Because I'm trying to help them to get used to the feeling of being uncomfortable and getting across to the other side and realizing wasn't as bad as they thought, because that's something that a lot of us adults don't have, and it's actually something you need in life. And that's actually what makes maths and things hard, because if you're going into other lessons, you're being told information that you're going to regurgitate. If you're doing the logic-based subjects, you have to think for yourself. So there's an element of you trying and it not working and trying in this, and that's what makes you uncomfortable, because you're like, I just want to be told the answer. But it's like, no, you got to figure out the answer. And now that's going to expose you to the fact that you don't know what to do. You don't know this, rather than just repeating and learning the script of what somebody's telling you and just reciting it back. But even though it's uncomfortable, which skill in life would you rather have? It's going to be more useful. It's going to be problem solving, because then when you're uncomfortable, you're going to be used to that slight feeling of discomfort and be able to be like, okay, here's how I deal with this. This is why I truly believe a lot of people in society and adults don't want to deal with all these things I'm talking about, and we all play happy families and happy friendship, because no one wants to be challenged to have to like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but let's get through it. And the thing is with the kids, once they do, they love it. After the other side, they're like, oh, I actually really like maths now. That's so much fun. Because now they've got a new skill where they, within themselves, feel like they know how they can tackle things that make them uncomfortable, right? And I love watching it, because then as I'm going to then teach them and stuff, then they'll be like, no. I'm going to try and do this, because I think I can do it. Whole different energy. I think I can do it. I want to do it. I'm engaged. You know why? Not because I was barking at them, not because I ignored them, because I was attentive, right, to their needs, and I put myself in their shoes, and I talk with them, and I help them through, and I teach them through how to just get through the uncomfortable conversations and things. And it's okay if they cry. Okay, that's fine. I understand. It's really something that was really hurting you. It's okay sometimes if they get a little bit angry, because I'm like, hey, you're still learning to make and regulate your emotions. I maintain a lot of calm, and I've had a lot of parents say that to me, like, you have a really calming energy. I have to, because I have to. If I don't, if they start screaming and I start screaming, that's not going to help anybody. That's why even in class, you never catch me shouting at the kids, yeah, in the classroom, like, oh, I never talk over them. I always just stay dead silent, and I just sit there and just sit on my desk. I'm not going to shout. I'm not going to raise my voice, because I don't need to. I'm not going to. We can have a conversation, because they have to learn. I'm not doing it to punish them. And that's another thing. I feel like a lot of things adults do, it's not about learning, it's about punishment. And it's like, but punishment is supposed to, if you're doing it right, it's supposed to teach you a lesson so that you know better, not supposed to just make you scared. That's why I don't do those things. If I'm gonna do any type of disciplinaries, if you will, there's gonna be a lesson behind it, and there's gonna be a reason, and I'm going to explain it. And yes, that sounds like a lot of work. Welcome to having children. And that's my point. I wanted to bring this video up, because, you know, especially me being me, and me, you know, when I'm in the work that I do, people always like, oh, do you have kids? Oh, you make such a good parent. I'm like, do you know what? Maybe, but I also have a lot of issues I need to deal with that I don't want to pass on. That's the biggest one. I don't want to pass on. I also then have to trust somebody else that they're not gonna, that they can be trustworthy enough, right, to hold up their end of the bargain. You know, I have to make sure I have the emotional bandwidth that I'm happy enough. I don't want to be alive, so why would I bring somebody into life, a life I don't want to live in, and then just be like, well, you should be happy to be here? No. If I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have to be happy to be here. These are the things people aren't thinking about. I want to be able to afford for them. I want to be able to afford for them to do the things that they want to do. I don't want to be I want any lesson I teach them, I want it to be by choice, not by necessity. You know what I mean? I want it to be by choice, not by necessity. I want them to be able to enjoy their childhood and live as children and get to be fun and do fun things, and then slowly but surely, in a measurable amount, appropriate only out of needs for them and not my own necessities in my own life where I'm not prepared, help them to learn their independence and have responsibilities. You know what I mean? So that's why. And that's why I talk about it all the time, because it's a topic that comes up all the time about me and having kids. And it's like, it's just another thing where, it's like in the dating pool scene. I'm like, okay, you think I would make a great wife and a great mother? Yeah, I don't think you make a great father, mate. And that's usually what I think. Because husband, besides the point, I don't think he would make a good father, like, to be honest. I don't know that this is what I want for my children, because that's one decision I do get to make, and I take that very seriously. And I've got to think about all the best and worst case scenarios, like the stories I've been sharing today. What if this type of stuff happens? How are we going to deal with that? Are you going to have the level of patience that I have? Are you going to hold up your end of the bargain, or are you going to undo the work that I did? Because this is the other problem I have with teaching as well, is a lot of times when the kids then go home after we've had a victorious day of accomplishing everything, and they've left with a better mental state, and they've also done the work of the day, and they've still done the work of the day. Let me just reiterate that part. The next day it's all unraveled again, because they've gone back into the hellscape that they're living in. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm sick of fighting against this. I'm actually sick and freaking tired. I'm sick and freaking tired of this, because that's what's going to happen. So anyways, I'm going to wrap that up here. I think I'll just leave it at those 2 videos. Maybe we'll circle back later. It's finally late enough for me to actually be able to go and do stuff. But yeah, guys, this is why I'm so passionate about it, because like I'm working, you got to understand something. I'm working with the children. Do you know how many children I've worked with? Do you know how many times? And also, I feel like the Lord lets this happen to keep my heart, soft on purpose, but it's really traumatizing. I kid you not, every other night at least, I dream about babies. And I'm always dreaming, and in my dreams, they're always like one of a couple of things. It's almost always like a very young baby, like under the age of 1. And there's always they're never my own child. And there's always a bunch of adults around. And the child is in distress of some sort. And no one's paying attention. And I've already got like 100 other things I'm trying to do. And then I'm always just like holding a baby and trying to like help the baby, and they're crying, or like they need changing, or like or they're just, and I don't mean just like crying, I mean like shrieking. And there's always something extreme happening to them, and like really extreme. Like there was one where the baby like fell off of like this high thing and was just shrieking, crying in my dream. So I wake up in tears a lot of times, and then everyone tried to pretend that it wasn't that bad of an accident, but it was literally like, it was like a baby falling off like a 5-story building, for example, and the baby survived, and the baby, saw the bit, and then it's like flash forward to the baby's life in the future, and the baby had all these disabilities, and they were in like the backs in their car seat with their parents in the car, and the like parents were just like, everybody, all the adults, everyone was acting as if like, oh, this just happened. This just happened. Oh no, they don't know. You're just disabled for no reason. And I'm still here, just like, so I'm waking up gut wrenching, crying from things like that. The other day I had the worst one. It was a really small baby that was in a very messy room. And again, I was trying to do other things that I was supposed to be doing. And I go in, I hear this baby like shrieking, crying, right? Which that, is the cry that pierces your soul. And I go into pierces your heart. I go and find the baby, and the baby's like trying to climb up on this like couch, and the couch is like covered in all this stuff. So I take the baby and I move the baby away, and the baby keeps climbing up and then slipping and then like hurting itself and then shrieking, crying. And then I go, and then it comes walking over to me, and I just see the cute little baby face in my face, just crying, like coming to me for like to help to hold them. And I'm getting traumatized, like even just remembering the dream, thinking about it right now. And then for some reason, I think I put the baby wherever I put the baby to be safe again. And then the baby would go and climb up on the sofa again and come shrieking at me. So I was like, I can't leave you alone. So now I'm holding this baby again. And like, I'm always dreaming this whole thing. I can't get away from it. I can't get away. And I feel like, I genuinely believe, you guys, and like this is really important, like I really believe that this is because like someone has to care, like eventually, enough about the children. And so yeah, it tortures me, but it reminds me when I wake up and when I, have my job, or when I'm dealing with kids and when they're being annoying, it just, I think of them and just as in their pure baby form. And it's the same reason why I don't take things people say to heart, because I see everybody as a child at heart. We were all children, and not in this whole the inner child way. I mean, in a deep way, that we're all a result of, evidently, probably a lot of heinous things that happened in different ways. And yeah, that was really upsetting to remember that dream. That was horrifying. And I remember I woke up, I was so upset. I was like, I can't believe I only got to sleep for 2 hours, and this is what I get. This is how my life is, by the way. I sleep for like 2 hours, and then this is the 2 hour sleep. This is the 2 hour sleep. So it's traumatizing, but like I said, I'm okay with being traumatized by it, because I'm like, this is keeping my heart soft, and my heart, understanding what I'm doing and knowing who I'm dealing with when I'm talking to children and even adults, and why I don't take actions lightly, and why I say the things that I say and I do things the way that I do them, because I know that I'm having an impact, and all of my actions impact not just the kids but everybody else around me. And it's selfish of me to not think about things that way. That's why I say I don't believe love, friendship and family. I don't believe in it. I don't believe it lives here on earth. Anyways, I'm gonna go and gather myself, because yeah, the baby dreams, literally like every other night, it's a baby dream. It's a baby dream, and it's always a baby, and they're always just distressed, or they need something, and all the other adults in the room are just ignoring it. And I'm always usually trying to find their parents, or trying to find who's responsible for them, because I'm like, I also don't know what I'm supposed to do with this baby, because it's not my baby, which is the same thing I have in my workplace. Like I was saying, when these kids are like, don't tell my parents, I'm like, oh, but I'm not your parent. It's not this isn't my place to not tell them. So now I don't know what to do, and I feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. So anyway, I'm gonna leave that there, you guys. Check out the previous video, because it was heinous, and sorry that we left on such a heavy ending, but that's just the story of my life. My life is just heavy because I'm always around children. If life's a game, was played to win. God bless you all. God loves you. I love you, and I'll see you in my next one.